All right. It is a cold winter's night, and it's time for the Speed Skating video podcast. All right, my guest today, I kind of call her the Iron Woman of speed skating right now because she likes to do 3Ks and 5Ks and 1500s and mass starts and team pursuits and team sprints. And I don't know, pretty soon maybe she's going to do the World Sprint Championship or who knows. But all the way from Canada, Ivanie Blondin.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dan.
Absolutely. All right, so we had some audio-visual issues, but we're back at it here. So you guys got 2 World Cups coming up in Calgary, so you're out promoting it in the cold today?
Yeah, we had actually really close to us in Varsity, right next to the Oval. We had an outdoor rink that just opened. It's a really nice district. It's called the University District, and so we just went out there, a couple of us that will be skating at the World Cup, to help promote the event and hand out some free tickets for families and friends. So that was pretty cold. It's cold out there, but it's nothing that we're not used to. So
cool. So you've obviously had a long career in long track and a lot of ups and downs, and you know, all kinds of great things have happened. But in a sense, I kind of feel like we almost never knew you because you did your time in short track, and because of a lot of injuries and other things, you almost never really found long track. Can you tell us a little bit about those early years and how you ended up finding the long track as a real competitor?
yeah, so I started out in short track mostly. During, like, when I was a lot younger, I would do a little bit of long track during the winters when the ice would freeze over and we could build an oval outdoors in Ottawa. And I qualified for Junior Worlds in short track when I was 14 years old and just kind of stuck with it and continued on that path. When I was 15, I qualified for my first Junior World Cups in short track. So everything was flowing like in the right direction for me in short track. So I kind of forgot about long track for several years, and I found myself in Montreal at the National Training Center training with the national team there. And honestly, I think I was also very young, and so it was really hard for me. I've always been very independent, so for me, moving away from home wasn't really a problem. But I never felt like I kind of fit in there. And French is my first language, but because I'm not from the province of Quebec, it was really hard to kind of merge myself into the team because most of my teammates were from Quebec, the province of Quebec, and so I faced some pretty hard years, and I kind of just grew more and more depressive over the years that I lived in Montreal. And it's I guess it's kind of bittersweet that I found myself back into long track. And my last year junior, I had the opportunity to skate junior trials for long track in Vancouver, and I had already qualified for the Junior Worlds for short track, but the junior trials for long track were actually in Vancouver, and I knew that after the Vancouver games, they would close down that oval and we could never skate there again. So I kind of just did it on a whim, and I flew to Vancouver, did junior trials, and qualified for Junior Worlds also in long track that season. And so that's kind of what reopened the door for me on the long track side. But then after failing to qualify for the 2010 games in short track, I actually, I was in such a bad state of mind. And of course, my family and my parents saw that. I had depression issues. I also had anorexia issues. And so my parents were like, you're done, like you're moving back home and it's time to move on to other things, because they saw like how bad my mental state was. So I just left Montreal. I moved back home to my parents in Ottawa, and I was kind of looking at other opportunities. And it was actually my old coach, Mike Rive, and on the long track side that sat me down. And he's a very like passionate, he's still like very much in my life, and I call him on a regular basis and talk to him. And he sat me down back then and he was like, look, you have an opportunity to long track, and I know Calgary is really far away from Ottawa, but maybe you should just try it and see how you like it. And so I took 3 months in Ottawa completely off, and then I actually drove across the country. Well, I went to the States first to go meet one of my old teammates, Spencer Zettler, down in, oh my gosh, where was it? South Carolina, I think it was. And so my dad dropped me off there, and then Spencer and I drove to Calgary from South Carolina, which was quite the trek, but it was kind of a cool way to start my new journey out in Calgary. So yeah, I found myself in Calgary, and they put me directly into the national team, and I kind of just found my peace there. I felt like I was from day one kind of part of the family, and they treated me like I was their like younger sister, and it was just a completely different mindset for me to try something new and to feel so accepted into the team right away. I knew that I would stay in long track. For sure, I've had my ups and downs since then, but I knew like as soon as I moved to Calgary, like this was my new home.
So it's kind of interesting. I've as I've been interviewing people and talking to people about this sport, it seems to me like the team aspect of it, even though it's an individual sport in a lot of ways, the team aspect seems so important. And it's really curious the way, just some cultural things for you in Quebec was an issue. And then you show up in Calgary and immediately it changes your mindset. You got going, I think you made your first World Cup appearance in 2011, but then you had some issues with, you had mono.
Yeah, I think it was 2012 season. So the first year out in Calgary, I had qualified for World Cups, and then, or just like for, I think it was just the 5K. And then I qualified for World Championships in Innsel that season, 2011. And then the following season, and I had a really hard time like at training, and we didn't know what was wrong with me. And I just I would show up at training just completely exhausted, and I didn't really know what was wrong. And it wasn't until at the end of the season that we figured out I actually had mono the entire season. We didn't know. I just kind of kept pushing through it, not knowing that I had it. And my ex-boyfriend at the time, he ended up getting mono at the end of my season in March. And so I was like, okay, like maybe I should get blood tests done too to see if I have it. And then on the blood tests, I guess they saw that like my levels had already come down. So it would explain the whole season. I started feeling ill in October, but for some reason, we had never tested for mono, so we didn't think too much of it. I thought I was just overtrained or just tired, fatigued. I don't know. So, but there's a couple of races. Mark Wild was my coach actually. There's one in particular that I remember from that season, and I think it was in October. And from one weekend to the next, like one weekend I skated really well at training races, and then the following weekend he had me do a 5K. And that was right around the time where I started feeling really ill. And I started this 5K, and back then, of course, like I wasn't going as fast, but my lap times just like dropped in the first 4 laps. And I stood up because I was doing, I think like 36s or 37s. And I was like, I can't continue this race. Like I was so wiped out. Like I thought I was going to pass out. And so I just stood up, and he was actually so mad at me for doing that.
Yeah.
Of course, as a coach, like when you see an athlete quitting in the middle of a race, like it's never a good feeling. So, but yeah, it was not a fun season to go through, especially not knowing that you were suffering from mononucleose, right?
Well, I think,
Yeah.
we know the 2022 version of you, or really the contemporary version of you, as your awesome mass start and awesome team pursuit. When you went to the long track, how soon before you started doing those races?
I guess it was, I can't even remember when I started. Mass start was later on, like it was more of a test event. And then in 2018 was the first time that they had it at the Olympics. But previous to that, it was just a test event, right? So sometimes at World Cups they would have it. And for the team pursuit, if I remember correctly, it was right before 2014, or like a couple seasons before 2014. So I guess the season after 2012, so 2013 and 2014 is when I started doing the team pursuits with Brittany Schuster and Christine Nesbitt and Sydney Clausen as well. I've done a couple with her, and I kind of started merging my way onto that team. And I think with my short track background and just being able to sit in a pack and feeling very comfortable. I think from a very young age, I performed really well in the team pursuit because it's my comfort to be able to skate with people and to follow and to be drafting. I think I really kind of I performed well under those circumstances. So yeah, it was yeah started pretty young, I guess, in those events.
Yeah. So you qualified for the 14 games. You know, it wasn't you know, a massive performance, but what do you remember about those games? What did you learn? Was it impactful for you?
It was definitely impactful. It was more of an eye opener for me going into those games. I was so young still back then, and it was an eye opener for me to see like what the Olympics were. You know, like qualifying for the games is one thing, but to be able to realize like what it takes to get to the next level of attaining like podium performances internationally. And I would say like I was ultra committed back then, but there was still certain things, and I was so young that I didn't realize like I had to really focus and kind of put all my energy into skating to be able to get to the podium. So for me, it was more of an eye opener of seeing like, wow, this is amazing. Like qualifying for the Olympics is one thing, but I wanted to get on the podium. And so it kind of just continued my journey of just wanting more, you know, like my initial goal was to go to the Olympics. And then after 2014, it was like, no, I want to get on that podium.
Yeah.
So
So I started looking at, you know, that path between 14 and 18, and we'll talk about 18 in a minute because that was a real, you know, important part of your life. But I was looking at some things that happened along the way, and one that kind of stuck out for me in the 2015 World All Around. You know, you skate 4 races at a World All Around if you're doing well. You had 3 PRs. Did you remember that?
no,
That's, I mean, that's
I don't
insane.
know.
You know, you finished 6th overall, and 3 races were PRs. I mean, that's super cool. Do you remember that event?
I do. If I remember correctly, it was in Calgary. Is that right?
Well, I
Yeah,
assume
it was in
so. I
Calgary.
must have been well, it had to be at altitude if you're PRing in 3 races. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was in Calgary. And the year after 2014 was kind of, I would say, like my breakout year in long track. It's when I started hitting podiums and like randomly in the 3K and the 5K, and in the Master especially too. And then Team Pursuit we were getting like on the podium pretty regularly. And so it was pretty cool to see that jump, you know, like from being almost like a B group skater, having just edged myself onto the Olympic team and gotten one of the final spots for the team pursuit, and I think it was 3K, 5K, and then to finally get on the podium internationally, like that was my goal, and I was finally achieving it, and I wanted to just obviously continue from there and keep moving forward. So it was pretty cool to be able to experience that the year after the games because it was obviously like 2014 was, like I said, an eye opener for me. And I knew what my next goal was. And I was like right on it the following season. So,
yeah, and I think if you look at that quad, you know, like you said, your performances just continue to get better. And then to make matters better or worse, you were very versatile, right? So you're going to be mass start, team pursuit, 3K, 5K. So, you know, do you remember when the expectations really started to build for you heading towards 2018? And how much of that do you think was external versus internal?
um, as an athlete and also just as a person, I've always put probably way too much pressure on myself. I would say like it's a blessing, like it can be detrimental to my mental state at sometimes for sure. Um, but I do think that it's the reason why I'm sitting here right now, right? Like I've been hard on myself like from a very young age, and so it's something that I still battle with today of being too hard on myself in certain circumstances when my performances um don't reach the expectation of what I expect I should be doing. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a blessing too, right? So pushing myself to that limit constantly, and always striving to be better at every single race, every day on training. And I'm an ultra competitive person, and so it's some days are harder than others, I guess. And so at training, for example, like I'm always trying to be better and trying to be kind of like the top dog in the training group, which is good, but sometimes it's not the best, I guess, mentality. The monsters inside that keep pushing me.
Yeah. So just to review quickly, 3K, 5K performances were okay. No podiums there. The fall and the semifinals of the mass start, obviously you were going to be a favorite to podium there. I watched the crash. It almost looked like you stepped off the track on the inside. Is that what happened? Do you remember?
No, it was actually, so I watched, it took me a long time to actually look at it again. But I felt a tiny slip in the corner from this is what I remember personally. And then when I watched the video, I slipped a tiny bit, and then I put my hand down on the rubber on the inside of the track, and my glove versus the rubber stuck, instead of obviously in short track, when you've got some quick tips on the ice, it just glides, right? And so it twisted me out of my position. And then I lost a little bit of speed. And then there was a Japanese girl, from what I remember, that was right behind me, and she put her hand on me, and I was already in a state where I was not balanced, and I just went down. So, and I broke my blade in that fall. And so getting back up, and I tried to skate with, I can't remember what her name was, from the Dutch team, to catch back up to the pack. But it wasn't feasible for me because my blade was completely screwed. And so I had a huge gash in it, and it was just every time I would try to skate on it, it would just scratch the ice surface. So,
well, you kept it up for 7 laps, so nobody can say you weren't trying.
Yeah. So it was, but from I think just my expectations on myself, and also for sure I was feeling outside pressure. And it was probably a little bit of outside pressure, but mostly pressure that I was putting on myself. And then not podium in the 3K really got to my head. Not podium in the 5K again didn't really got to my head. And then the team pursuit happened, and we lost to the Americans in the final. And of course, that was devastating for the entire team, and especially how it all went down too. It's not something that we were obviously very happy about. And it's hard, right? Because in the Olympics, it's not just one race; there's semifinals, and we didn't want to throw the semifinals, so we went hard, even though we were against the top ranked team. And then when it came to the final, we lost that little bit of steam, right, going into the final, and the three of us were tired, and of course we just got edged out by the American team. So that was pretty heartbreaking. And then I from race to race, it was just disappointment after disappointment, and of course I was being really hard on myself. So once I got to the mass start, I don't think I was in the right headspace, and when you're not in the right headspace, and you can just make the smallest mistake, and then you fall, and then your games are pretty much over. So it was tough, and especially coming home for the games when you're expected to potentially medal, or having chances at getting on the podium in 4 different distances, and then finishing 6th, 5th, and 4th, and then falling in the mass start, which is your main event. It's devastating, and especially for someone like me, who I naturally put a lot of pressure on myself to perform. It was devastating, and so I kind of just found myself in this spiral of going downhill, and found myself back in a depression. It was not easy coming back from that, but yeah.
Well, I think it's admirable and inspiring, to me anyway, that you've been really public about this, and obviously you've made a tremendous comeback, and you're killing it. A lot of people may have given up or just said, maybe this isn't for me, but can you take us through a little bit about how did you rebuild yourself?
So yeah, the year after the games, like things obviously weren't going well. I was struggling to even just show up at training. I honestly felt like walking into the oval was like it was just hard because in my mind at the time, and of course, like when you're suffering from depression, nothing that you think of is positive. So I thought that everyone saw me as a failure. And so walking into the oval was hard for me. Like I had some days where I didn't want to get out of bed because I didn't want to go to training, because I didn't want to have to face these people, because in my mind, they saw me as a failure. And so that was kind of like the monsters that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And of course, like the self-talk, like talking to myself in my head of like, you failed, you suck, you this, you that, like that. Those are the things that were going through my head at the time, which is, it's not easy, but it's really hard to get yourself out of that. But I knew, for me, like growing up, and the things that make me feel happy, are like as animals, like I've always been surrounded by animals. I've always kind of had like an obsession with just all sorts of animals. And so, we have our dog Brooke, and she was a puppy at the time. We had just gotten her like the year before the games, and I had my parrot as well, Gizmo, and he's an African gray parrot, and I've had him since 2010, since I moved out to Calgary. And but having the two animals in the house kind of wasn't enough, I guess. So we kept bringing in more and more animals, and I actually studied for a veterinary technician, and so it's kind of, yeah, it's really close to my heart, I guess. And so we kept filling the house with more and more animals, and I like to focus on kind of like the broken pieces. So the animals that are in really bad condition, like physically, or and so we started fostering dogs and cats and puppies, um, and it, in a way, like I was helping these animals through like whatever disability they had. Like we had an amputee cat, we had a dog with hydrocephalus, which is swelling on the brain. So it was like a neurological condition that he had, and so when we first got him, he actually couldn't even stand on his like four legs to be able to eat, or he would walk around in circles because he had a head tilt. And by the time I was done with him and he was ready to be adopted, he was able to like run trails with me. So that was really cool. And I think just by helping these animals and focusing on something completely different, helped me kind of like rebuild myself mentally too. I was focusing on them, and it was bringing me joy to see them recover and get to the point where they could be adopted and live like a somewhat normal life. So
Wow.
that's kind of the approach that I took to it, of how I guess I didn't realize it at the time of kind of what I was doing or what fostering animals was doing to me and like mentally. It wasn't until afterwards, when I finally got myself out of it, that I started looking back at my progress of from the point where I came home from the games to when I started feeling better and took myself finally off of the depression medication that I was on, that I was like, holy shit, like it was the animals that were helping me through it. So
Yeah, that is really cool. I mean, I kind of knew the story, but hearing it is really neat. After you kind of got it back together and you started fighting again and getting back in the game, you did something in 2019 that I had to go back. I read it 5 times and I had to read it again because I just couldn't believe it. You went to the line in 5 straight events, 5 different events, and you won gold in every one. That's incredible. 1,500, 5K, team pursuit 1 week, and then the next week 3K and mass start. Go to line, ready, 5 golds.
yeah,
How the hell did you do that?
honestly, like it still kind of blows my mind that I was able to achieve that at some point in my career, and everything kind of just fell into place. Like the first 2 World Cups that season they weren't terrible, but they weren't great. I had gotten on the podium, I think, in one of the 3Ks. I think I was third, shared the podium with Izzy. And then the following weekend, I think we had a 5K in Poland, and I think I was fourth there, and I was kind of obviously disappointed from that performance. And then we went to Spain actually in between, and we just did some cycling. And for me, cycling is also another one of those things that I absolutely love. And to just shut your brain off and get back into the training zone and not think too much about the performances. You also give your body a little bit of rest to like those small little muscles, the hip muscles and everything from skating. And to just do something different, I think was really like good for my mental state and good for my physical state. And at the beginning, like I was tired when we had gotten to Spain. We went to Girona, but then by the end of the week, it was like I felt like I was invincible. Like I just felt so good from doing like sub aerobic, like super easy vitamin, and I like really wasn't pushing anything. And so by the end of that week, I felt like I was like super energized. And we went to, I think the first stop was Astana, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Or was it Nagano?
No, not anything was the second one. I think.
Mixing. Okay, Nagano was the second one. So yeah, we went to Astana, and then I got on the ice the first day, and everything was clicking. Like the pressure that I was able to put into the ice, like it was just, skating felt easy, which it's not often as a speed skater that you get that feeling. And I still struggle most days. Like I can't get that feeling again. Sometimes I'll feel it like once a week for like one lap where I'm like, oh, like this feels so good. I'm using my body weight. And yeah, I think everything just started clicking really well, and mentally too, kind of like shutting things off in Spain and then going back into the race mode. I think I was just in such a good place mentally that I was just enjoying it, you know, like having fun. I felt good. I felt super strong. And so I was going into that race weekend, just feeling very confident. And so, and I don't know, I think that's a lot of the thing in speed skating. I think a lot of it is mental too, of that confidence and gaining that confidence. And I think around that time, nothing was bothering me. Like I felt good again. I was out of like my hole of depression. And so, yeah, skating was just easy. And I went into every single race. I wasn't stressed. I didn't feel any pressure. I wasn't putting pressure on myself. And I was just hitting every single lap time constantly. And even the day before the first race in Astana, I did a race spec. And of course, there's usually always a whirlwind, but I was doing inner and outers, and I did like a 6-lap race spec, and it was all 31s and O's. And I was like, oh my God, like, how am I able to do this? You know, like it didn't make sense to me, but I was just easy skating. Like the pressure was so perfect, and I was using all of my body weight, and my body was just flowing the right way, you know?
Well, and yeah. I mean, you kept it rolling, because I think at the end of that year, you won your second World Mass Start title.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was that.
Just piling on the good feelings. So let's fast forward a little bit. So, you know, you came out of it, you're skating great. You had a really good quad going into 2022. So when you get to 2022, you know, you're feeling good. And I would imagine with that, then here comes some more expectations. So are you thinking, holy shit, you know, here we go again? Or were you just like in a better place and you're ready for it?
Honestly, since the pandemic started, I think I was not where I was in 2019. I wasn't necessarily to the point of saying that I was depressive, but the pandemic was really hard on me mentally. And the season that we had at the beginning of the pandemic, when all of our World Cups got canceled and we didn't have ice in Calgary anymore because our ice system broke down.
Yeah.
The chillers went on us, so they just shut our ice down. That was mentally really hard to go through. And that season, I decided to only focus on the mass start and the team pursuit, which I think at the time was a good thing mentally, because I knew that my performances wouldn't be up to my expectations in the 3K, 5K, and 1500. So I just did the mass start and team pursuit at the 2 World Cups that we had in the bubble and at World Championships as well. And every single one of those I podiumed. So of course, obviously that was good. And then the following season was the season of the games, and things weren't necessarily clicking for me. Like for individual distances, I was really struggling to find the good feeling that I had in 2019. And I think it was just technical errors and also just going back to the pressure that I felt in 2018. I didn't want to find myself back in that situation. And I think deep down inside, I felt that, you know, like the pressure that I was putting on myself again of you're going to the games and if you come home empty-handed, what next, you know, like,
Yeah.
so it was actually like last season, the year of the games was actually not an easy season for me mentally. And there's certain points where I did break down and it wasn't easy for me. But of course, coming home finally with the win in the team pursuit and after experiencing that, it was a relief. Like a big weight lifted off of my shoulders. And then of course the mass start and getting a silver in the mass start was obviously an incredible feeling. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was in
race a little bit.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So I want to show you something, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, go for it.
Sprinting for goal, and it's Arena Shelton in front of Blondin. Lola Bridges.
Okay, so this is 2 corners to go, and obviously you're following Arena, which you should. And at this exact moment, you see you're slipping a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And as you come off this corner, because you slipped a little bit, it looked like maybe you went to the inside because that's where your body took you. And I wanted to ask you this for a long time. Did you pass her here because that was your plan, or did you pass her because you kind of fell to the inside and then figured, well, holy shit, here I am, I just gotta go?
No, I passed her and that was my plan.
Oh, okay.
I honestly thought that by getting her, I was impatient, and now, like right after the race, I knew what my mistakes were to get the gold. I was impatient, and I should have waited one more corner and taken the draft. But I was impatient. I went on the inside thinking I could hold her off, and of course, I lost it in the last couple of meters. So that was a little devastating.
Let's watch the finish here.
Yeah,
just for fun.
Lola Bridget are getting herself into a great position. She goes wide. Some contact there. So Blondin goes to the lead. Shouted in second place. Blondin looks strong though. 1 to go and another skater down. Blondin racing for gold. Ivanie Blondin, the 2-time world champion. Shelton comes strongly on the outside, and it's Arena Shelton.
Yeah, it's hard.
No matter what,
Tough one.
I gotta tell you, you guys put on a hell of a show.
Yeah.
And in the ladies' mass start right now, and you know, the first World Cup in Norway. Super fun to watch.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was I was going to ask you about that one as well, because you had 2 Dutch girls to follow and you picked one, and then you cut in between them. That was super cool. They did not like that.
No, they did not like that. I guess we found out afterwards. I don't know why the Dutch coach told my coach Bart this afterwards, but their plan was actually to have Schouten behind Marijke and not allow me to do an inside pass on Marijke. But Schouten didn't have enough speed to keep up, and so I kind of just weaseled my way between them to do that inside pass. So I went like wide, tight on them, so kind of pulled like a little bit of the short track move on there.
It was awesome.
So yeah, it was a cool, that was probably one of my best races.
But down the following week, it's like, you know, Irena is like, okay, she lost the 3K, so she's got to go win that. And then she said, well, that's not going to happen in the mass start. And she took off with like 7 to go. So
Yeah, their plan going into that race was actually to just keep attacking on me. And quite honestly, like that was obviously it was a great plan for them. So whoever got away was just going to keep going. But I think looking for the next races, obviously, I'm going to be aware of that. So I'm just not going to let them go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Francie hasn't been skating. Do you know if she's going to come back in the second half?
I think she will. I texted her right before the first World Cup, and I was like, "Hey, are you coming? Like, are you?" I don't know. It was like weird because I thought she would show up because I had seen obviously her like Instagram posts and her stories that she was training. But then when I saw that her team was there and she wasn't in Norway, I was like, "Hey, like, where are you at? You coming?" And she was like, "No, she was taking time off a little bit, and she might finish off the season, coming back." But I have no idea what her plans are. So it's kind of weird, like not having her there. And I was telling like Shelton and Marika this, like it's kind of just the three of us right now that are sprinting for the line, and it would be nice, of course, to have like more girls that are competitive in the distance. There's a few that are coming up. There's a little Italian girl that's coming up and she's been really consistent. So I think in a couple of years, she might find her way onto the podium, which I think is really cool. But yeah, it's kind of strange, like not having Lolo there. So
yeah, she's a fighter. She's fun to watch.
yeah.
So let's talk about something else with the 2022 games. Well, let's just look at this image quick. These three, I want to talk about these three.
Oh boy.
So we could do an entire show on Val, Ivanie, and Izzy, but you guys were super competitive going into the games, and you in Japan had a great final. Unfortunately, the Japanese had a slip, and so it didn't end, in a competitive fashion, maybe. But you guys were fantastic, and you earned a gold. What do those two mean to you?
I mean, like, I don't know, without them, obviously I wouldn't be a gold medalist. So it's pretty, I don't know. I think we'll be bonded for life for that reason, and we trained really hard for that medal, and to finally achieve it at the Olympics, I think is something that obviously not very many people get to achieve. So it was rough though. Like we're very different in personalities, and sometimes those personalities clash, but we all had that same goal of wanting that gold medal, and that's what made it work. There's some days that just they weren't easy, and you put three girls together and it's never easy. You could be best friends, like you could be siblings or whatever it is, but you put three girls together that are ultra competitive, and there's some days that aren't easy. But at the same time, I think we all respected each other enough to be able to, and we trusted each other. Like once we were on the ice, we knew we had each other's backs, and that's all you need for the team pursuit. So
well, I was kind of studying up on one of the TPs from earlier this season, and really looking specifically at who's leading the first lap, who's finishing. You guys are still exchanging, and you haven't given in to this new trend of follow the leader. Do you spend a lot of time talking about who's going to go when, or have you kind of fallen into this plan and you just keep rolling the way you've been rolling?
No, like we've been using the same plan. Like I think we found the perfect plan for the three of us. And Izzy, obviously she's more of a long distance skater. She can still get herself up to speed quite fast, which is pretty incredible. And then out of the three of us, I had the highest like top end speed, I guess. And Val's obviously mid to long distance as well. Like she can get herself up to speed. And so our tactic was always to like have Val start to save my legs a little bit to bring the speed down. And then of course putting Izzy at the back where she's chasing us, and she's already in the draft once we're starting the race, to get her up to speed as fast as possible. And of course, our first lap is always usually like a tiny bit slower than when you look at the Japanese team. But we always focused on ourselves, and it's a very odd team. It's a different tactic that doesn't work for other teams, I guess, but it's the best formulation for the tree that we have, right? So Val always does 1.5. I do the next 1.5 and try to bring the speed down or just to maintain it and keep it really high up there. And then the last 3 laps are Izzy's in the front, and then Val and I's job, obviously, at the back. We're just pushing as hard as we can to get ourselves to the line, you know? And also just with the 3 of us, like Izzy's taller, Val's a tiny bit taller than me, and then I'm the smallest at the back. And with that, there's kind of like the suction that you get the draft, but I get sucked in completely because of there's so like bigger bodies in front of me breaking the wind, which makes it easier for me to be able to push, right? And of course, there's some moments where I feel like if I push too hard, then I'll push myself off of the back because I don't have someone behind me to keep me there. But I don't know. It's the best formulation that we found, and we kind of just stuck with it. And I think it's like it's the recipe for our team, you know, and every team's different. And I think if we were to try having Izzy at the front for the entire race, like we wouldn't necessarily probably have the top end speed at the beginning of the race that we need, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's the right recipe for us, and we kind of just stuck with it.
And because you guys have a recipe and you've got this figured out and obviously very dialed in, do you have specific lap times that you know that you're trying to hit when Val's in front and then when Ivanie comes in? I mean, or you're just trying to go fast?
I'm just trying to go, to be quite honest, like I don't even look at the lap times. And especially when I'm at the back, I can see the board if there's a screen up there.
Sure.
But I can't see the lap times from the coaches. So I don't even pay attention to that. Like I know what my job is, and I think the 3 of us, we all go by feeling.
Yeah.
And there's so many things in that race that we know we need to hit to be able to have a good one. So our focus is mostly on that. So it's mostly all by feel. Like we're not necessarily looking at the lap times. We're just going by feel, and we know what our jobs individually are, and we just hit those as best as we can.
So, well, speaking of the team, I've kind of heard some people say, that the pandemic, had some positives, and one, of course, is a series of fine videos that you guys put together. So let's just take a look at one of these just for fun, quick.
Somebody give it up. Somebody give it up. Somebody give it up to our dad.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah, it's enough of that one.
All right, so who's the ringleader?
I was, I guess. It's funny because I think I'm like the oldest one on the team. But I'm kind of a jokester, prankster, and during the pandemic and when we were on the road, it was boring. I wasn't in school. Most of us weren't taking classes, and so we kind of, for me, I needed the distraction, and we obviously thought it was funny. It was fun. It bonded the team, and it was mostly the younger girls that were doing them with me that I get along really well with. But yeah, it was more of a distraction thing for us, and of course, people loved it, so we just kind of continued on and did these funny things. And one of them actually.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, one of them that we did before the Calgary World Cup, it was a Shania Twain one. And I still have yet to post about this, and I really want to do it, but Shania Twain ended up using it in the documentary that she released on Netflix. at the end in the credits. So it's pretty funny. I don't know. It's interesting to see that like one TikTok video that went completely viral ended up on the Shania Twain documentary, which I think is pretty cool.
How did you talk Larry into appearing in a towel? Or did he volunteer?
He kind of just did it. Like we were doing it out in the hallway and then he's like, oh, this would be funny. And so he just like walked by in his towel and then like walked back and we were just like, oh, it was kind of just always like on a whim. Like, of course we would like pick a TikTok and be like, oh, this one would be funny in our skin suits and just looked absolutely absurd. And that's kind of how we would go about it. And then sometimes these random things would happen where it was just like, like Larry walking in or yeah, it was...
So I think I've sent you at least 3 messages where I accused you of being an animal whisperer. I don't know how you do this. How do you get birds to just come and sit and hang out with you and eat out of your hand? And I just...
So this one actually, so you see the syringe at the end.
Yeah.
This one actually, I think it hit a window at my parents' house. So that was like right in front of my parents' house. So I was heading
once again.
Yes, yeah, which is, it's funny because it happens very often where I'll find like injured wildlife, and I always want to bring them home. I always want to rehabilitate them. It's kind of just something that happens, and I kind of do. But yeah, the bird thing, I don't know. I guess maybe they feel uncomfortable around them. Like I've had a bird my entire life, so it's it's fun.
Yeah. This is just a photo. I just want to show this because I just think it's awesome. And a lot of my time is spent on Instagram when I'm trying to get to know people and figure out their stories. And you are in the woods or on a lake or something constantly, which I think I think the whole world could learn a little from that when we're all staring at our screens all day. But that is just, I love it.
Yeah, I don't know, Calgary, like that was out in the mountains. I actually went on a hike before. I think it was like in between the races at fall trials last year. I was feeling really stressed from racing and I ended up going hiking. I think it was twice out in Kananaskis. But Calgary in general, and one of the reasons why I love living here, and this is going to be, I think, my home for a very long time, if not for the rest of my life, is you can be within the city, and every single day, like I go walking 5 minutes from my home, and I'm by the Bow River, and it feels like you're outside of the city. You're like in the woods, on trails, and the city of Calgary has the most amount of like off-leash parks in, I think, the entire world, from what I know, and it's pretty incredible, like to be within city limits, and I can literally walk to the river, or I can drive 2 minutes and be right there, and be able to go hiking on the trails every single day. For me, is kind of my escape. It's what kind of keeps me sane as well, right? And it's a pretty cool city to live in, and also having the mountains so close by. I could drive 45 minutes to Kananaskis and be out on that trail that you just showed.
Yeah.
Up in the mountains, like by...
It's just a lot of like cross-country skiing and chasing coyotes.
Yeah.
And just...
Every night. We chase... Yeah. Brooke likes to chase coyotes on a daily basis, so she's...
So it's pretty obvious for me to ask you if you're going to end up working with animals when you're done skating?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I studied for veterinary technician, and I'm still undecided as to if I want to go in that direction or not afterwards, like if I want to work in a vet clinic. From my experience and being around vet clinics and fostering and everything, I think I would have a really hard time mentally being exposed to animals in distress or animals in pain on a daily basis. Yeah. That I think it would take a toll on my mental state. Though I don't know. I think it would be an easy assumption to make if I did find myself somehow involved with animals in my future career.
So you haven't decided what the post skating Ivanie Blondin is going to be?
Not yet. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I've got a lot of things kind of on the go in the background, and like if maybe it's media, since I'm bilingual and French is my first language, or working with animals. And I got an offer, for example, to be an ambassador for the Calgary Zoo, which I haven't really followed up with yet. And there's a lot of different options. I did a lot of cycling this past summer. I did Canadian Championships for road cycling, and surprised myself with the 9th place finish, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
Did that with Connor Howe. Also did the same thing. We were kind of doing the same races here and there, and it was really fun to experience that also with a teammate from speed skating. But also the both of us performed really well on the cycling stage. So I don't know, like I still feel like I love training for speed skating. I still love the sport. Could I find myself in cycling in the future? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of options out there. So yeah.
Well, speaking of skating, are you thinking about Italy 2026 at all?
As of right now, like I'm not closing the door. I want to take it year by year. We also want to have kids kind of soon. So kind of soon, like I'm not sure when exactly. But I'm 32, right? So it's kind of like that time where you got to start thinking about that a little bit. So it's I don't know. We haven't really made any decisions yet. Conrad, my husband, kind of is taking time away from skating right now. We're not sure if he'll go back or not, but we're working on his permanent residency here in Canada. So until that's completed and finalized, I don't think I'll be putting a bun in the oven until then. So
do people still say that?
I don't know. I guess I kind of just said it.
Awesome.
Kind of felt right. I don't know. He's baking bread right now, so.
Oh, I think I asked you this before, but his last name is Nagy.
Yeah.
And it's pronounced...
It's not Nagy.
It's pronounced
Nudge.
Nudge.
Yeah. Nudge. Yeah.
Nudge.
Is that right? He's looking at me funny. Can you say it?
What?
Nudge. It's so hard. Like, it's such a hard language to learn. And every time I spend time in Hungary is when I learn the most. And I can kind of baby talk my way around, you know, like I know certain words and of course like the swear words, which are really important. Kind of like in the French language, you know, but I can count to 10 and so on, and just I can say like random things. Understanding conversations, like I can somewhat follow but not fully, but it is a very hard language. The pronunciation is very hard. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So yeah. I think I covered most of everything that I wanted to, so I think I'm going to put a bow on this with a closer.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everybody loves a comeback story. You know, and so many of the people that I've interviewed and talked to, like nobody's career is linear. Everybody has, you know, issues and ups and downs and things they struggled with, or moments where, like you said, all of a sudden skating was easy and you didn't even know why. You know, that's what I think is so fascinating, and it's so also crazy about this sport, where some days you just show up and you shove your feet in your boots and you're like, I feel like I've never worn these before. And you get on the ice and it's like, I feel like I've never done this before, and it's maddening. But hearing your stories and seeing you being, you know, honest and vulnerable about what you've gone through and still, you know, struggling with but succeeding at the highest level is fantastic. I really thank you for hanging out with us and sharing. And I wish you nothing but the best for the rest of the year. And I'm gonna watch these mass starts a lot closer because it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on in the pack. Doesn't seem like all the girls are that nice.
No. I mean, I think it happens on the men's side too, but the women are vicious.
Yeah, see?
Let's just leave it at that.
All right, we will leave it at that. I'm gonna let you go help Conrad do some baking. You've been a great guest. Thank you for spending some time with us. Awesome time here. Another great episode, and we're out of here.